So how many beings, because I know it's way more than the Hathors, but how many beings, for people listening, do you think you have made contact with?
You mean since I started this experiment?
Right. I'm assuming you're going to say hundreds.
Yeah, I would say something like that. But a lot of them I've encountered, I feel their energy and I realize I don't want to have anything to do with them. So just because I meet them doesn't mean I have to interact with them.
Right. And another thing that I find interesting that has come up when I've talked to people in the occult realms is that you sometimes test these beings. They might reach out to you and then you say either you don't want anything to do with them or you say, look, if you're going to bother me with this stuff, I want to see you do something in the physical. I want to see you show that you are legit, that you're not just a hallucination, that you have some kind of power and agency. Do something. And in several cases, they do, right? Can you give us an example of a time where a being was challenged and then manifested something in the physical to validate their existence to you?
Well, of all the beings I have interacted with, the one that I find most intriguing is Mary Magdalene. And Judy and I were doing a workshop based around her work, and she had us cast these gold and silver amulets, and it was equal parts gold and silver. And she gave us the method for how to create these, but we tried it and it wasn't working. I'd read research and I researched how to do it. She'd already given me the method, by the way, but I took it a different direction and used, methods that had been used before by other people. And this is a true story. The ferry was about to, we live on an island, and the ferry was about to leave in about an hour. And if we missed that boat, we'd miss our plane and that would be over. So she said, why don't you try the simple method I suggested? And so I did that and it worked. Surprise, surprise. So anyway, we get to Washington, D.C. This is where the workshop took place, was in D.C. And she said, bring a compass, and the implements are to be placed on the altar in specific ways. Now, this is where it gets really fascinating. She wanted us to put the candles at a certain angle off the compass. And so I set them out, and then the compass, it was all fine. And then we did one of the sessions with her, and I went back to the altar, and the compass was spinning around, like out of control. It wasn't tracking anything. And she said, don't worry about it. That's what happens. The local magnetic field will change when there's enough spiritual energy. Now, here's another fascinating part about it. We had students in France who were doing the same ritual as we were. They had a compass. They knew where to place things. We're talking about several thousand miles away from DC. Their compass spun around out of control, just like ours in DC. And these are two separate compasses. Then toward the end of the workshop, when it was over, I looked just before it was over, and the gold had completely covered the silver. You couldn't see the silver at all, which is odd. We did the last energy piece, which was very powerful, and then she said to me psychically, go check the altar. And I went back, and the silver had come up, and it was equal ratios. Now, how in the heck, from the standpoint of physics, could that happen? There was no heat, nothing was involved, there was no energy going into it, but literally the physical structure changed. That's one example.
Yeah, I've heard you talk about that, and that is very interesting. And it made me think that so many times when humans are interacting with something non-physical, there are many stories that have that shape of making contact, and then the being says, hey, if you want to have more sustained and regular contact, you need to do this, this, and this.
Yes.
And it's like they use the first phone call to deliver instructions for maintaining that connection. And I just find that really interesting. And so often it does have to do with various angles and placements of things. You get into anyone who dabbles in the occult, and they'll tell you orientation is important. North, south, east, west, directions you face. I mean, obviously, people of an Islamic faith know that. But orientation is very much a part of, I guess, these situations, communication rituals, we could call them perhaps. But I like that you test these beans and have throughout your years. I like that you had that first initial 3 different sessions, 3 different places you went and you delivered the message and to test the hypothesis. Does this work? I am not a very good meditator, or I always say I'm energetically dense. People are probably sick of hearing me say that. But I was like, let me try. And I tried to get a message to you to then repeat back to me to see if this was even a possible mechanism. Did anything come through?
No.
Well, we try.
Yeah, that's what we can do. It's all an experiment.
Exactly. Well, I appreciate you saying no. So another aspect of the non-physical is places. We talk about the beans in the big soup and locking on to the infinite spectrum of them. But there's also something to be said about places. A lot of times when people have a psychedelic experience or even a dream, they will go to a place that feels physical, maybe in their internal world. I could say right now, imagine a big purple room, and everyone in their mind's eye they kind of have to. They will visualize that purple room. That's not really a real space. It's not a physical space, and all our rooms would look different. But it seems like there's something about being able to travel to these non-physical places that seem physical. I guess my interest is in repeatability. When we have dreams, it sometimes feels like we're in a random situation dropped into the middle of a movie that we're now engaging with.
Yes.
What would you say about the prospect of repeatability, of finding the right mechanisms, maybe similar to the way you would contact Mary Magdalene? Do this, here are the angles, here's the positioning. Could there be some kind of protocol to revisit a non-physical place with some kind of repeatability and reliability?
Yeah, there's probably several ways. One of the things that might be helpful is to talk about the principle of lucid dreaming. So when you're dreaming, you're in a particular brain state. But then as you go deeper into the dream, you enter the imaginal realm. And the imaginal realm is a fascinating internal world that's created by your 5 senses. So you have internal representations of the 5 senses. You're actually not experiencing anything physically because your body's asleep, but in your mind, you're having these vivid, sometimes experiences. And then you can have a lucid dream where you're aware that you're dreaming, which is a very, very interesting state.
Yeah.
When you're in lucid dreaming, you can revisit it. You can just repeat the experience. So there's a technique that if people have a dream that is powerful, they say that one of the suggestions is to have a pad by your bed and to just jot down some notes, not the whole thing, but just to jog your memory. Because what happens is dreams are tied to a specific brain state. When you wake up, like you can have a very powerful dream. This happened to me several times. I said, I'll never forget this. This is the most powerful dream I've ever had. I wake up and what was it? Gone. So this method is to have the little note and you jog your memory and then you go back into the dream state by remembering. When you've developed enough ability as a psychonaut or as a meditator or a siddhas yogi person, then you will have the ability to repeat internal experiences in the imaginal realm. So you would go, if you had a powerful dream and you want to retrieve what it is, you go into a relaxed state, meditation, whatever. You just relax your brain. And when the brain drops down into the frequency domain, because there's many, many frequencies going on simultaneously, pop, the dream returns and you're back in the dream. You can rerun the dream. And you can change things in the dream that you might not like, that you think are actually impediments for you.
Yeah, see, this is really interesting to me because it almost feels like a type of life extension, because we have roughly 80 years on this planet, but you could take these in-between spaces in your dream time and really revisit certain stories that you want to revisit in a lucid state. And it's like living another lifetime, kind of. And it makes me think about, what were the Egyptians really about? What are some of these yogis really about? These people who sit and meditate for years. Well, they're not just sitting there like blankly. They're probably experiencing something in their inner world that is engaging enough to keep them sitting Indian style on a carpet or whatever the heck.
Yeah, you betcha.
Can you believe it, people? A video clip and a peek into how that sweet THC sausage is made. For some people, I'm sure it's nice to put a face to the name, so I started making clips that are a little more YouTube friendly than the full show tends to be. Get the full show on any podcasting platform. I prefer to keep it audio only, so we have a more decentralized distribution for a controversial show, and also so I can edit out the ums and ahs and barking dogs and all the things that happen when a person records in their home environment. And then if you really like the show, you can sign up for THC Plus, and instead of 1 hour interviews, you get the full 2 hour interview for just $8. I think that's a better deal, more of a win-win than asking you to support the show by booking a therapy session or buying generic Viagra. It's getting weird out there, folks. So just go to the highersidechats.com or click the link at the top of any set of show notes, and all your wildest dreams will come true. All right? All right.
The Higherside Chat Show, Greg Carwood and Company.